Avery Sinclair had never been this far from civilization. As her sleek black SUV bounced down the dirt road leading to the Silver Spur Ranch, she gripped the steering wheel like it was a lifeline. The GPS had given up miles ago, and the only signs of life were the occasional cow grazing in the distance. Her designer sunglasses slipped down her nose as she squinted at the horizon, where a cluster of buildings came into view. "This is where I'm supposed to spend the next 6 weeks," she muttered, adjusting her silk scarf. "Dad's really outdone himself this time." Avery's father, billionaire mogul Richard Sinclair, had decided that his daughter needed a reality check after her latest scandal, a viral video of her throwing a tantrum at a 5-star hotel. His solution? Ship her off to a ranch in the middle of nowhere to learn some humility. As Avery pulled up to the main house, a tall, broad-shouldered figure stepped onto the porch. He was wearing a faded plaid shirt, dusty jeans, and a cowboy hat that shadowed his face. Even from a distance, Avery could tell he was trouble. "You lost, princess," he drawled, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Avery stepped out of the car, her heels sinking into the dirt. "I'm Avery Sinclair. My father arranged for me to stay here." The man tipped his hat back, revealing piercing blue eyes and a smirk that made Avery's stomach flip. "Luke Callahan. Welcome to the Silver Spur." Luke Callahan had seen his fair share of city girls, but Avery Sinclair was in a league of her own. From her perfectly manicured nails to her designer boots, she screamed, "Spoiled rich girl." Still, he couldn't deny she was gorgeous. Her blonde hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her green eyes sparkled with defiance. "Your dad said you'd be staying in the guest cabin," Luke said, leading her toward a small, rustic building. "Hope you're not afraid of spiders." Avery shuddered. "Spiders? You're joking, right?" Luke chuckled. "Nope. And snakes. And maybe the occasional raccoon." Avery glared at him. "This is going to be the longest 6 weeks of my life." Next morning, Avery woke up to the sound of roosters crowing. She groaned, pulling a pillow over her head. Why do they have to be so loud? A knock on the door interrupted her misery. "Rise and shine, princess," Luke called. "Time to earn your keep." Avery stumbled out of bed and opened the door, still in her silk pajamas. "What are you talking about?" Luke leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed. "Your dad said you're here to learn some responsibility. That means helping out around the ranch." Avery scoffed. "I'm not mucking stalls or whatever it is you do here." Luke raised an eyebrow. "Scared, city girl?" Avery's eyes narrowed. "I'm not scared of anything." "Prove it," Luke said, a challenge in his voice. "I'll make you a deal. If you can last a week doing ranch work, I'll admit you're tougher than you look. But if you quit, you have to admit I'm right." Avery crossed her arms. "And what do I get if I win?" Luke smirked. "I'll take you out for a proper Texas dinner. Steak, dancing, the works." Avery hesitated, then stuck out her hand. "Deal." The first day was a disaster. Avery tried to feed the chickens but ended up chasing them around the yard. She attempted to muck a stall and nearly passed out from the smell. And when Luke asked her to help with the horses, she froze. "You're scared of horses?" Luke asked, amused. "I'm not scared," Avery snapped. "I just don't know how to handle them." Luke stepped closer, his voice low. "Relax, princess. I'll teach you." He placed his hands on her hips, guiding her toward the horse. Avery's breath hitched as his chest pressed against her back. "Just breathe," he murmured. "Horses can sense when you're nervous." Avery tried to focus, but all she could think about was how close Luke was. His scent, a mix of leather and fresh hay, was intoxicating. When the horse nuzzled her hand, she let out a surprised laugh. "See? Not so bad," Luke said, his breath warm against her ear. Avery turned to face him, her heart racing. "Thanks." Luke's eyes locked on hers, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Then he stepped back, clearing his throat. Let's get back to work. By the end of the week, Avery was exhausted but determined. She had survived feeding the animals, cleaning the barn, and even helping with the cattle. But when a sudden storm rolled in, she found herself stranded in the fields with Luke. "We need to take cover," Luke shouted over the wind. Avery followed him to a small shed, where they huddled together as the rain poured down. The air was thick with tension, and Avery couldn't stop shivering. "Here," Luke said, shrugging off his jacket and draping it over her shoulders. Avery looked up at him, her heart pounding. "Why are you being so nice to me?" Luke's eyes softened. "Maybe I'm starting to like having you around." Avery's breath caught as Luke cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "You're not so bad, city girl." Before she could respond, his lips were on hers, hot and demanding. Avery melted into the kiss, her hands tangling in his hair. The storm raged outside, but all she could feel was the heat between them. The next morning, Avery woke up in Luke's arms, her heart full. But their peace was short-lived. As they walked back to the main house, they were met by Luke's ex-girlfriend, Jess, a fiery redhead with a chip on her shoulder. Well, Jess said, her eyes narrowing. "Who's this?" "Jess, this is Avery," Luke said, his tone cautious. "She's staying here for a while." Jess crossed her arms. "Looks like you're staying pretty close." Avery stepped forward, her chin lifted. "Is there a problem?" Jess smirked. "Just warning you, sweetheart. Luke's not the settling down type." Avery's stomach churned, but she refused to let Jess see her doubt. "Thanks for the advice, but I can handle myself." As the days passed, Avery and Luke grew closer. But Jess's words lingered in Avery's mind. One night, as they sat by the fire, Avery finally asked the question that had been bothering her. "Is it true? Are you just playing with me?" Luke's expression turned serious. "Avery, I'm not gonna lie. I've made mistakes in the past. But with you, it's different." Avery's heart swelled as Luke took her hand. "I've never met anyone like you. You're strong, smart, and damn stubborn. But that's what I like about you." Avery smiled, her eyes glistening. "I like you too, cowboy." On the last day of their bet, Luke took Avery on a horseback ride to a secluded spot overlooking the ranch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "You did it," Luke said, his voice filled with pride. "You survived a week on the ranch." Avery grinned. "I always knew I will win." "So, city girl," Luke said, "ready for our date?" Avery smiled, her heart skipping a beat. "Always, cowboy." As they rode off into the sunset, Avery knew she had finally found where she belonged, saddled up with the man who had stolen her heart.